Good morning, everyone. I am Kristina, and I am not feeling very positive at the moment, which is quite controversial since we're going to be talking about positivity now for the next half an hour or a bit more. I kind of feel that positivity has been a bit of a curse word in our movement, in that sense that we sort of deal with such heavy issues that positivity very often doesn't fit into the pattern or something like that. But let's look into it. And I think that in addition to talking about positivity or hope, we will definitely be talking about stress relief and overall resilience. So although Marta already introduced me, here's a few words. So my background in animal rights started some time back already. When I started Nähtamatud Loomad 2 years ago, which is a part of Anima International, I feel that I sort of got a restart on my life or something like that, because everything was different after that time. But in addition, I am finishing my master's degree in sociology. And to be honest, I really feel that going to university and studying sociology was very influential in understanding the society better that we all want to influence. And besides that, I really value reading books and long-distance running. And hands up to the brave 2 people who ran 15 kilometers this morning, Yuko Maciek and Elina. So huge respect for that. Yeah. But it should work. Okay. So what we will be talking about overall is the negativity overload that sometimes can happen in our movement and with our work. We will be talking about some coping strategies for sustainability, because we all need to be doing this work for the long run. We all need to be here in all the tens and hundreds of care conferences to come in the future. And maybe I will be able to give some tips on a strategy to winning our cause. Okay, but why did I choose the very controversial topic of positivity? One of the reasons was that when I was talking with my friends from all over the world in the animal rights movement, from different continents, from different organizations, I was sensing that there are very different approaches to our work of moving towards animal rights. You could see that there were some people who were genuinely positive, genuinely optimistic. They were thriving when they were seeing the results that our movement was achieving. And you could see that they were sincere with their approach to positivity. But there are other approaches as well. With some, for example, you can see that, okay, we look good in the media, in social media, to our supporters, to our donors, etc. But actually, when we look at it, there is no hope left. We're doomed. So that was basically the driving point that made me ask these questions, that both of these approaches and both of these like examples of these people can bring good results for animals. But I sense that, like, what makes this gap happen? So maybe that's a question where what you can ask yourself as well. Is optimism or seeing or focusing on the positive sides of our work, on the future, etc., something that really grows inside you? Or is it just a facade? So that was what drove me. And when we look at the broader picture with the animal rights movement, then, okay, sorry. This was supposed to work. The conditions that we work every day in are pretty heavy in that sense that the subject of our work is animal suffering. To bring a random example, that like some time ago I needed to edit and find materials to compile a video about pig farming. So I found myself for hours and hours watching through materials of piglets being mutilated. And I kind of felt that, how could I ever sell this idea to someone that, yeah, come work with us. You can watch piglets being mutilated for hours and hours. It's amazing. But at the same time, I do feel that I have the best job in the world. So how do we put these two, both of the sides together? That there's loads of negativity. I was speaking from a privileged point of view of just having to watch the footage and not having to go to the farms and see and witness these animals with my own eyes. And I think that these issues are sometimes neglected or sometimes overly emphasized. So I would like to bring about middle ground in that sense, that coping with negativity, but not being too sensitive about it. That we can work with these materials, talk about it, run effective campaigns for it, etc., but not let it get under our skin. So that is an essential part of our work, basically. And with the risk of looking slightly stupid, but honest at the same time, I want to speak a bit about my own experience in the movement. Because I feel that although now, when I'm 28, I'm running an organization, I'm thinking a lot about sustainability, a lot about self-care, things have not always been that way. So this is a photo of me. I was underage. I was at some protest. I think have you seen an angrier person ever before or something like that? Obviously, this photo was published in the media, and that was how the animal rights in Estonia, the movement was depicted at the time. And I don't want to look that I just had a teenage anger issues or something like that. But to be totally honest, in the beginning, I thought that we should be doing this work. This is important. Everyone should go vegan overnight, etc. But I really didn't see any hope. I knew that this work was important, but I didn't think that we could actually achieve results. Everything was in dark colors. Everything seemed hopeless, basically. And coming from a hopeless place, anger is quite a natural response in that sense, that you want to help, but you don't see any hope, because back then I didn't really believe in effectiveness or pragmatism or strongly built campaigns, etc. My bad, of course. But I think that starting to work with the anger, when I went to university and when I discovered pragmatism, I think, to be completely honest, in a way, it might have even saved my life. Because being like this all the time is not very healthy. So that has been the developing curve for me personally. And I think that definitely I wasn't alone in this. And this isn't a singular case in that sense, that we might feel negative emotions overcoming us and influencing us way more than we would like to. And to move further from there, I would like to talk about some good concepts on how to deal with negativity and stress. And this is related to positivism in that positivity, not positivism, in that sense that the more stress resilient we become in working for animals, the more easier it is to see the positive aspects of it, to focus on just appreciating the people around you, fighting for the same cause, wanting to become better at it, wanting to improve themselves. This alone can be already one reason to smile today. for example. And I really appreciate the fact that during all these years when I have been active, the last couple of years have been a huge growth spurt in that sense that more and more leaders of huge organizations are taking care of themselves, are focusing on these issues, are implementing these ideas in their organizations. So that can only mean that in the long run, we are better able to cope with stress and negativity. So I know that many people already in the animal rights movement have been reading about Stoicism, have been trying to integrate that philosophy into their daily thinking. Can you raise your hand if you have heard about Stoicism? Cool, that's as I was saying. So to be totally honest, a few years back when I started reading about it and looking into what's the hype and what's going on, this basic idea, which is like a paraphrase, obviously us as a movement in trying to save the world, we can change some circumstances, obviously. That's why we're here. But then again, there are other situations where using this principle can be really beneficial. There are some instances where circumstances are out of our reach to influence. But what we can influence is our attitude. And a few years back, that was really relatively, for me, it really had an impact because mentioning the previous anger issues, I understood that having a bad temper or a short fuse when I saw something that didn't fit into my worldview, that it doesn't need to be that way. I can control my reactions. I can choose my attitude. So I think this core idea of Stoicism can be really, really beneficial and useful for the animal rights movement. When we take upon huge campaigns, when we have stressful meetings with companies, when we do presentations, when we give media interviews, etc., we cannot change the circumstances which are stressful, but we can edit our attitude in that sense. I was really, really nervous about this presentation, but then I thought that it will be a huge learning point for me to overcome this. I could bring about, 500 examples of trying to look things from a different perspective and that helping a lot for the animals. Has anyone read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning? Cool, yeah. This is a book I really, really recommend because it goes into depth about this idea that you can change the circumstances, but you can change your attitude. The circumstances where Viktor Frankl writes the book are a Nazi concentration camp. I think after reading it, my first initial idea is that, okay, I'm never complaining again, ever. So it's a very beautifully written, very compelling book about how to cope with circumstances which are horrible, dreadful, draining, literally killing you, basically. And luckily, these are not the circumstances where most of us are on a daily basis. But reading about his perspective on it, afterwards, he developed a school of thought about it, which is called logotherapy. But basically, the way that he was describing his coping mechanisms, the way that, for example, how he was saying that the members of the concentration camps who were better read, had a broader perspective of the world, who had seen more theater plays, etc., they survived better because during very, very heavy circumstances, they were able to escape to their own head, to their own mind, to think about the books or the other cultural aspects that they had either experienced or read or seen, and they were able to thrive okay, thrive is definitely an overstatement, but they were able to survive the horrible conditions that they were in. He also brings a lot of other examples, and I really recommend to read Man's Search for Meaning if this idea interests you. And I think that sometimes in a movement where all of us are very sensitive people, that's why we're sensitive towards animals or other groups as well who need our help. Sometimes in a movement of sensitive people, it might happen that we say things that influence us negatively way too easily. Maybe we don't need to share our negative ideas about something because we can always take under consideration that it will have a negative impact on the people around us as well. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that if you do complain a lot, it will influence the people around you as well. So we can change the circumstances that are difficult, the society is fighting back against our causes. It's hard to win our campaigns. It's hard to, be on the media all the time, etc. But we can change our attitude about it. It's a marathon, it's a long distance run, and the difficulties help us grow. So I think that just keeping that quote on the back of your mind sometimes can help to control your negative thoughts sometimes when it's really necessary. So on the wave of Stoicism, I'm now going to show a quote by Marcus Aurelius, and it's going to be controversial, so be ready. Yeah, I really like the quote, but it can sound pretty brutal. You agree, right? That someone has a sincere concern that they want to share with you, and you're like, stop complaining. That's obviously not the point of it. But I think that having this like very short form idea in the back of your mind can also help us become better at enduring difficult situations, which are an inevitable part of our work. If it's endurable, then endure it, stop complaining. I think that if I had heard that like 10, 12 years ago, it would have been very beneficial for me because I would have had it would have had a positive impact on my negative worldview for sure. And I think that sometimes we might be complaining about aspects of the society, for example, which are hard to impact, or issues like that, when we, for example, could take the approach that social change always takes time. Society is a very huge network of very many different institutions, aspects, etc. And it does take time. So whenever we feel that, oh my God, we're doing so much work and like everything is moving so slowly, then it's okay. The important part is that we are self-reflective and we are doing the work at all. So I think that this slightly controversial slide can be super beneficial at some times. Although many of you said that you have already read about Stoicism or heard about it, I would recommend these two books, and I would also recommend Ryan Holiday's The Daily Stoic online presence. I think it's a good thing to surround yourself with if you're interested in becoming more resilient, if you're interested in enduring difficulties in a more elegant, better way. So that would definitely be a good thing. So I want to speak about another theory that can help us become more in control when we're in a stressful situation, and that can help us see things in a more positive view. So it's a theory called Locus of control, and it's very simple in its essence. There are people who see that they have the internal locus of control. And what that means is that I can control what happens to me. If I'm in a difficult situation, I will troubleshoot. I will ask a friend. I will Google it. I will call someone, whatever. I can find the solutions. I can change what happens to me. I can influence it. And not only to me, to my campaign, to my organization, to the movement in general. This is the internal locus of control. I have it inside me, and I will impact the world around me, whatever aspect touches of me. The other version is the external locus of control. And that means that I am mostly influenced by external events. Whenever something goes wrong, it's the blame and the fault of the society, the other group, someone else. I can do nothing about it, etc. This is the external locus of control, meaning that I cannot change what happens to me. I am in the wind of society, basically. So these are basically two different options. And what is said by psychologists is that the internal locus of control overall makes you feel that you have more control over your life, obviously, but that means that you will be less stressed because you know that you can rely on yourself. But you cannot be sure if whatever happens in society, with your group of friends, with your colleagues, etc., who knows, things change, but you always have yourself. So that's the overall theory. When we look at some examples, and this locus of control theory was developed by Julian B. Rotter, who is an American psychologist. And if we look at some examples of that, for example, in negotiations, which are an important part of our work, if negotiations go badly, for example, you meet with a company or you meet with the representatives of a governmental institution or something like that, you can either self-loathe or try to find good ways to make the negotiations better again, to troubleshoot, to not give up because the first time went wrong. And maybe it's easier to sort of self-loathe in that sense that it's a difficult situation. We feel that we only had one shot at it, but how often are we in situations where we only have one shot at it? We can try again, we can try better, we can try bigger, and we will learn from this instance. So I think that in negotiations, this internal locus of control is super important, because otherwise we might exit from the negotiation saying that, well, they said no, it's their, they are the external deciders and it's up to them. With relations in general, if a colleague has a bad mood, we either take their bitterness personally, which is the external locus of control, or we just let it go past you, thinking that this probably has nothing to do with us. And let it be, we all have our bad moments. With confidence, if starting a new campaign or fundraising work seems really, really hard, then we can either blame it on the society if it doesn't work, or find successful ways to do it anyway. So it's either like, can I do this? Can I find the ways? It doesn't mean that you have the answers. None of us do. Like, none of us have all the answers. But it's the faith in yourself that I can find them if I look good enough. And also patience. And I can bring an example of this from this week, that if you're waiting for something you can't control, just relax, because stressing doesn't influence it. So I gave an interview this week. It was near the biggest caged egg farm. So we went there in the morning and I had to debate with the owner, etc. And it's I don't thrive in debates because it's a bad format. So after I came back, I was really stressed because the news was airing in the evening. And I had so many hours to I wonder how it went. Maybe I should have said that. There was wind blowing on my hair. I looked bad. Why did I say that? oh my God, just like going over and over. Like, and I thought, okay, so the news is airing in like, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours. Am I going to do this all day? I have so many other things I need to worry about. Then, like, I can't control it anyway. It has been shot, the footage. They are editing it. Like, we cannot do the debate again, etc. It doesn't help that I worry, because I need to use that 5 or whatever hours to do other things. So after this very short debate with myself, that relieved this unnecessary stress a bit. But the interview went well, so it wasn't necessary to worry about it anyway. But I think that these are the types of situations we might find ourselves very often, that we cannot change some things, and it's okay. We are already changing so much in the world, and that's amazing. So that can help. So maybe a few takeaways. There are different approaches in that sense that, like, some say that, yeah, if I think myself as being less good at it, then I will overcome that and perform better or something like that. And then the other approach is that when I think of myself as being confident, then I will get better results. And that seems to be the key according to psychologists. In that sense that if you approach yourself as being more confident that I can do it, let's bring it on, then you will take on more heavier responsibility. You will take on bigger, more challenging, more challenges with a bigger impact just by being confident. But by being, let's say, unnecessarily modest, you will not take these challenges on. You will just, well, someone else can do it or something like that. I guess when I started Nähtamatud Loomad 2 years ago, I was like, oh my God, can I really do this? I have no idea. Like, I have no support in my country, etc. But I guess like being confident about it helped a lot. So that's something I can support myself as well. Another thing is definitely that some stress is good for performance. That means that you will thrive, you will push yourself further, you will be focused, you will make sure that all your brain potential is brought out, if that's possible. And it's not always bad to be a little stressed, because it will make you deliver better results. So staying focused is one of the key results of that. So it's sort of like the learning point is how to make sure that I know that, okay, this is the good amount of stress and now I have gone overboard and I need to think about it. So yeah. And I also think that when we look at the bigger picture, whether we look at the animal rights movement, whether we look at other social movements, whether we look at our own personal life, our friends, our colleagues, then I think that a balanced look at life is something that psychologists emphasize a lot, that there are positives and negatives, and it's a mixture of the two. So basically, maybe that's something to keep in mind, that when we tend to see something super negatively, it might not be balanced. And we might need some balancing positivity. Then again, we can also test the hypothesis that looking things at a too positive view might not be balanced enough. So yeah. And I wanted to basically recommend some of the books that I have read, which in my opinion, they have the information that can make us thrive better, that can make us be more resilient in our movement. And they are from very different aspects. One is about sleeping, for example. That changed my life for sure. But the charisma myth is although like Master the Art of Personal Magnetism is the title, I felt that the parts where Cobain was talking about how to deal with stress, how to understand when you are just not doing a favor for yourself with your thinking or with your body language, etc. I think those were really beneficial parts of that book. Understand Psychology is overall like know thyself type of book in that sense, not in the self-help way, although it has that impact as well. But knowing why we are the way we are is a pretty good idea, knowing that. So that can help you know your weaknesses, know your little tweaks that you need to focus on to be more resilient or to be more positive and cope with stress better. And The Sleeping Book, Matthew Walker. This is probably one of the most important books I've ever read. And I think that all animal rights activists should read it and should sleep at least 8 hours a day, really. I can't stress, this is a weird recommendation for the end of the talk, but so it goes. So yeah, and that's all by me. Thank you for listening and have a great CARE conference.
Thank you. Have you got any questions about the talk or staying positive? Sleeping. How do you manage to sleep 8 hours a day, for example, a night?
Yeah, I read that book, I think it was in a spring this year. And before that, oh my God, I was the worst sleeper ever. It was unimportant because I had so much bigger things to do in life. But after reading it, basically, the point is that what Matt Walker says is that we are so bad at evaluating our own well-being. And very often when people have slept for, let's say, 6 hours, they say that, oh, I'm fine, no problem. I can go about life, etc. Like even sleeping for 6 hours is quite long in our current society. But the thing is that when these people who have been sleeping for, let's say, 6 hours, put an MRI, are put under a brain scanner. Basically, all the parts are like error red, very bad situation, sleep. So the main takeaway is that you cannot trust your evaluation. And some people say that, yeah, I'm fine with sleeping less. You're not. And 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep a day is super necessary to all of us. Get a sleeping mask. That's super important. Put the curtains. Get very dark curtains and put them on every evening. Make sure that the room isn't too warm. Like 18 degrees Celsius is good. Don't watch screens before sleeping. Put the large lights out. Use, I don't know, small lights or even candles, he says. And building a rhythm. That means that every day you go to sleep at the same time and wake up at the same time is one of the best things that you can do to yourself. Another thing that I didn't, this is a talk about sleeping, but it's okay. Another thing that I didn't know was that one of the reasons why we do sleep or what function it has for our brain is that throughout the day, our thinking process causes our brain to leave some substances around. I'm sorry, I don't know the English term for it. And during sleep, these substances are washed away. So sleep is sort of like a cleaning lady or something like that, cleaning man. So if we don't sleep enough, these substances, well, some of them are the ones that eventually might cause us Alzheimer's. So I'm not particularly interested in Alzheimer myself, like getting it. So that sort of, the reading that Why We Sleep book made me feel like powerless, that like I have to change this. So I really, really recommend this in the long run, that if you sleep enough, if you sleep well, you will work better for the animals. So yeah, thanks.
Hi, thank you for the talk. How do you think that leaders in animal rights movement could help with resilience of their followers?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm really happy to see that in the last years, leaders have become really good role models of stress relief, self-care, etc. In that sense that sleep is being talked about more. Recommending to exercise is being talked about more. Coping with stress in that sense that like you have the environment where you can say that, okay, I'm really stressed about like giving this interview, and others that can say that, yeah, like I was also stressed, I had this whatever, and then I like, for me, this helps. Maybe this will help you as well, giving recommendations. But I think that whatever is said about like role modeling is also really an important part in that sense that we can say that, yeah, you should be stress resilient, but if you're not stress resilient yourself as a leader, like it won't be serious. Like we cannot take that seriously. So I think that being a good role model is definitely something that is important.
Just a quick one on a technical note when it comes to sleeping. Do you also count in daily naps, if you do them, in that 8 hours?
I don't count them, but Matt Walker says that we should have daily naps, not do them before 3 p.m. And like take that like hour or half an hour, and like in that you don't drink, for example, coffee in the afternoon, but you go for a nap, and that's in addition to sleeping, as far as I understood. Napping is good. Yeah.
Hi. I have a question.
Yeah.
Because you can only kind of like do this if you're self-reflecting, and you can like try and practice everything on your own. But like you're working with people who are negative and who are complaining a lot.
Yeah.
And you had a slide where you say you just have to pass it, like let it pass by you. But like, how can you let it pass by you if it's affecting you all the time, and you have an annoying person who's complaining all the time about everything? How do you go about it?
Yeah. Very good question. I think like most of us have been in that situation. One option would be to very diplomatically have a chat with them. That I was wondering, I'm feeling that your comments sometimes that you see things from a negative side all the time, and do you maybe you can sometimes share the positive ideas that you have about this, because as you know, negativity can have an impact on others, but we all want to live in a good atmosphere or work in a good atmosphere. That can be an issue. But if we're talking about a situation where in an organization there's either an employee or a volunteer who doesn't fit with the working culture and who sees everything super negatively, and that impacts their work as well, then I think this is a situation where we should consider whether working together with them in the long run is even possible. But yeah, like sometimes it feels like that there are things that are annoying about the world or about people, etc. But the good thing might be just have a chat with them. Very not to be like, you're so negative, stop being so negative, but like just to sort of point it out. Maybe they haven't noticed. Yeah.
Okay, if there are no other questions, thank you again. And Thanks. Don't worry, the after party doesn't start so late, so you can go both to the after party and sleep well. So enjoy.